A few of the events and mechanics of how the ending of 3.7 occurred is presented in the story in a confusing way, so I wanted to break it down in this video. We'll be talking mainly of the following three topics: Causality, Cyrene and her role as a fully of amphoreus, and what exactly happened. 2. How amphoreus' rebirth into the world works, and will the Chrysos heirs remember us when they rematerialize? And 3. Is Phainon even an Emanator anymore after 3.7? Hopefully this video will provide another perspective for those who finished 3.7 and have some lingering confusions on what and how the ending of 3.7 happened, and clear some confusion on the way. Disclaimer: if you haven't finished the 3.7 quest, please don't watch this, as this video will entirely be spoilers. This video will assume that you have played 3.7 and the As I've Written World quest. Thank you very much. For post-game content, before I jump in, I wanted to do a quick summary of all the post-game content that helps flavor the 3.7 ending. I can see why Hoyo chose to focus on the emotional shock factor, but to put the romantic part of the ending as optional was truly like a choice, so here's a list of things to read if you like to explore the source yourself. Of course, there's the As I've Written World quest. The Eternal page has several sets of really cute interactions that you can load into. The amphoreus As I've Written, Cyrene has a section in the Saga of Heroes now. The epilogues have some updates that are really interesting. I recommend some here, but my favorite is this one. Cyrene is talking directly to Iron Tomb here. In the Astral Express, there's a few interactions, but the main one is, of course, the memory bubbles in the main car. On the table outside of Dang Heng's room is a teleslate. Interacting with it gives you an extra interaction with March and Dang Heng and some items. The Astral Express also has some data log updates. Some of the ones I found interesting are listed here. The one I like most is this one. Herta updated this one herself with fully the remembrance. So if you're into that, feel free to check it out. Okay, let's get to it. 3.7 ending summary. In the ending of 3.7, the heirs sacrifice himself using Nanook's blood to destroy Iron Tomb. Cyrene roots Iron Tomb's defeat into history by closing an era in causality through the power of remembrance, walking into the past to fix it. By doing so, she semi-ascends into a fully specifically for amphoreus. Cyrene then takes the opportunity when the trailblazer used the power of the trailblaze to bring all the world's memories back to reality, to use the power of a remembrance emanator and pseudo-eon to materialize amphoreus' memory data into the physical world as well. Then she gives the trailblazer As I've Written, informing them of the miracle that they've created, that the heirs are currently in As I've Written, amphoreus will be reborn but needs some time to materialize, and that she won't be there with them because she needs to keep Iron Tomb shackled in the past. So let's get to the first question that we're going to discuss today, which is Cyrene Causality and why she had to do the things she had to do at the end of 3.7. And to do so, we should first talk about what fully was revealed to be. Herta says it best in the data log on the Astral Express. Fully is causality that transcends time. Causality, in the interest of our current discussion, has two items: a cause that directly leads to an effect happening. In our world, causes will always happen before an effect. For example, you see a boulder on the edge of a cliff above a bunch of monsters. This boulder can't start rolling by its own. Something has to push it for the boulder to roll and squish those monsters to death. So you walk forward and push this boulder down the cliff, leading to the death of the camp of monsters. In our sense of subjective time, you will always have to step up and push the boulder before the boulder rolls down the hill and kills the monsters, as the push caused the boulder to roll. Fully and strong emanators of the remembrance are not constrained by this understanding of time, cause, and effect. Following the previous example, Let's say Foley is standing by the side of this valley and sees a boulder rolling down the hill and squishing the camp of monsters. Foley walks into the camp of killed monsters and collects some cool loot which he wants to keep. But as he walks away, he realizes something is weird. The camp seems to be reconstructing itself, the boulder is back on top of the hill, and the loot is threatening to disappear from his pocket. Sensing something is wrong, he looks back in time to check who rolled the boulder down the hill and sees no one. Despite him witnessing the boulder going down the hill, killing the monsters, leading him to get loot, the cause of the boulder rolling down the hill has gone missing. Or maybe it hasn't happened yet. Foley realizes what's happened and the two choices in front of him he now faces. He can walk away, letting his loot disappear as he goes about his life, leaving this whole incident behind as it reverts back to a state where the boulder never rolled down the hill. Or he can go back in time and push the boulder himself. He decides his loot is worth it, so he uses his powers of remembrance, walking into the past. He climbs a hill and pushes the boulder down the hill, making sure what he experienced in the past becomes the future. Cause and effect have become distorted in time. Although from an outsider's perspective, the events still occur in the order of someone pushed the boulder rolls down the hill, it squishes the monsters, and someone picked up the loot, where each item causes the next. For Foley, the order of causality is like this instead. Someone pushed the boulder rolls down the hill, it squishes the monsters, he picks up the loot, he realizes something is wrong when he wants to walk away, he goes back in time, and then he pushes the boulder. From this example, I hope you can see how Foley is causality that transcends time. He got his loot before the boulder was pushed. Foley and his Pathstriders are unlike most people. They can do things out of order. The issue is that there are rules around doing this. Foley can't do this infinitely or change the past multiple times, or the universe would be a chaotic mess. Herta and Cyrene's conversation enlightens us more to how Foley, memories, and causality works in Honkai Star Rail. So in this conversation, Herta says that Noose's fourth instant didn't end with Iron Tomb's physical defeat in the cosmos, because there's still a factor that can lead to his revival. The issue that makes it a continuing threat is causality that has gone wrong. To explain what causality and memories mean to the universe to Cyrene, Herta then defines the function of memories in the cosmos using lignification, using a tree as a metaphor for the universe. So as Herta says, the universe began as a seed. It grew into a great tree, and the present is its branches and leaves. The erudition calculates how the future will sprout. With so many possible outcomes, they choose to anchor one path, cutting away the crooked or fragile branches. Noose plays the role of a gardener here, pruning away branches so that the universe can focus its growth on stronger ones. However, no matter how much pruning Noose does, if the leaves and branches of the universe grow endlessly, the weight of its canopy might lead the universe to collapse under its own weight. That's where memories come into play. Memories stop the universe from collapsing under its own weight by becoming its metaphorical trunk. Herta explains how memory works like this through the process of lignification. In science, lignification happens when lignin, which is something that makes cell walls become harder, gets deposited into cell walls, creating wood. When Herta talks about soft sprigs forming a hard shell to fuse with the trunk, an easier way to imagine this is the tree ring's inner trunk. So every year a tree trunk grows thicker to support the weight of its branches and canopy. That's what Herta is referring to, that when the present moment passes and turns into the past is transformed into a lignified, hardened, and unmanipulable memory. These lignified memories then form the foundation of history that the universe uses to build and support the future. Explained in another way, we can say that all events that happen in the present are because of causal factors in the past. The past has to have happened for the present to exist. In a world where time is not always a straight line, memories are lignified so that the universe has a foundation to move into the future with, instead of being stuck in constant manipulations and time loops, making the past a constant state of the present. If that was the case, the universe would collapse. Memory in Honkai Star Rail is an actual term that differentiates from the past. The past is subjective and describes an order of events. See our above example on Pushing the Border, where Fooley's past was also his future. However, memory is something that has been anchored in time as something that has happened, transformed by someone's record keeping into crystallized history that no one can break into and manipulate. This crystallized history is then stored away into the universe's past, so current and future events can build off it. And the being that transforms the past into lignified and crystallized memory is Fooley. As Herta says, under Fooley's record keeping, the past becomes memory. The issue in this scenario is that Fooley is just an entity, not an omnipresent cosmic force without flaw. Therefore, where Fooley doesn't exist to transform the past into memories, that past won't be included in the universe's recognized history. Going back to the screenshot, in the corners they fully forget. Even the events of the present become fruit without roots. If fully isn't there to transform the past, a continuous series of causes that lead to a present event, into lignified memory, then any present event built on that subjective past is floating around in the universe with only a very subjective, very manipulable past propping up its current state. Therefore, that present event becomes extremely unstable because Honkai Star Rail is a universe where a whole faction has powers to rewrite the past when a situation like this occurs. Herta is mentioning this to Cyrene because Amphoreus was cut off from the universe by Lygus. The universe's Fooley had no chance to gaze at Amphoreus and the scepter, lignifying its existence in any way. Amphoreus is the fruit without roots that Herta is describing. The whole incident of Amphoreus is in a manipulable, non-lignified state. All 33 million cycles, the scepter, and anything from the very beginning when Lygus cut Amphoreus out from the universe. And that's not the only problem. Additionally, unbeknownst to Cyrene in the present who is chatting with Herta, Cyrene in the future had decided to walk into the past to ascend into becoming Cyrene Fooley. Future Cyrene Fooley did a lot of things to help the flame chase when she walked into the past. For example, gazing at the trailblazer so that they don't die, or gazing at Philia so that she and Phainon find the strength to start the eternal recurrence. And Cyrene Fooley created a lot of holes in Amphoreus' story that needed to be filled by an actor called Fooley from the future. Amphoreus' triumph over Iron Tomb would not be possible without Fooley being an active causal factor in its own story. Noose noticed these two issues. That's why Noose's instant Iron Tomb destroying the universe hasn't ended Even though the Trailblazer and the heirs had just killed him, Iron Tomb's defeat is still a present event, as there are still things to do from the standpoint of a being with a more subjective sense of time. Iron Tomb's downfall in the moment Herta talks to Cyrene has two identified issues with causality. 1. An emanator of the remembrance had decided, in the future, to cause certain events that lead to Iron Tomb's defeat in the past, with the issue being that the emanator has not yet decided to go back in time and cause the events in the past. And 2. Amphoreus's past and existence has not been collected into the universe's memory and is a floating fruit waiting to be anchored. This also explains why the radicals at the Garden of Recollection, headed by the seed of Anasrava, who is murdering her siblings, want to do this. They want to find where Amphoreus's memory begins and bring it out. In a situation where Cyrene has not yet made the decision to ascend and become Cyrene fully, then it's anyone's game to become fully if they're strong enough in the path of remembrance. Anyone with time-related powers can meddle in the gaps that Cyrene fully has not yet filled. If they can get to the beginning of the floating fruit first, they can manipulate it. And what a juicy fruit to manipulate, with Iron Tomb and Phainon and the first genius and everything amphoreus is. So to demonstrate just how much fully transcends time, Herta says even Nous has seen two paths, two equally viable paths from Nous. First path. Cyrene chooses not to go back in time to walk with the Trailblazer, leaving Amphoreus behind for now. Cyrene can, as Herta says, walk away right now and decide that she doesn't want to investigate why Amphoreus has causality issues. She's done her part and won Iron Tomb's fight for a better tomorrow. She can move on to tomorrow herself and leave the causality issues to someone else. The thing about the system of walking back in time is that if there wasn't a time limit, Cyrene can walk away and become the Fully for Amphoreus any time she wants. Time is subjective for her, so if there was no external pressure, she could travel with the Trailblazer for 10 years before going back in time and wrapping Amphoreus up. The issue is that Cyrene doesn't have time to spare. That's why Nous warns against it. That's why Herta is here. Established strongly in 3.6, Iron Tomb's ascension is highly anticipated by the radical seed of Anasrava in the Garden of Recollection. They want to destroy the universe faster so that they can ascend faster. Herta finds Cyrene the moment after Trailblazer uses the power of the Trailblaze and saves the universe to give this warning. Cyrene's choice, right then and there, decided whether Iron Tomb's defeat had a chance of coming back or not. That implies a lot. Without theorizing too much and sticking more to established facts, what we do know is that there's another Emanator of Remembrance who actively wants Iron Tomb to succeed, who recognizes Amphoreus as a floating fruit and has been sending hundreds of minions to Amphoreus over the years to try overtake it, and is probably watching Iron Tomb's defeat like every single other Eon that Elio mentioned. Cyrene probably only has that one moment to decide whether to wrap Amphoreus up or let it possibly unravel. That's why Herta says Cyrene doesn't have the chance to say goodbye to Trailblazer, because time, ironically for Cyrene, is short. It's also very convenient that Noose's two issues of causality would both be solved by Cyrene deciding to take the second choice and to go back in time. 1. Cyrene will fill in all the gaps where fully acted, and 2. After all the causality gaps are closed, she will record the complete incident using the path of remembrance to lignify this memory so that it's recorded in the universe's past so no other powers can meddle in it anymore. By doing so, Amphoreus becomes rooted in the universe's past and has the foundation to build a future that will not collapse. Fully is half a self-fulfilling prophecy because, as Herta describes, remembrance path striders always have free will to not step into the past. Noose could read two possibilities, but technically also Cyrene's future choice has already happened. This is also why Herta says this. Perhaps this is the choice every pure child of Anashova must face. A pure child of Anashova may always face the final result of their actions, and do they walk away from it, letting another child to take the reins of their present, or do they fulfill their own prophecy and step into the past to make sure their present is guaranteed? Cyrene obviously makes the choice that she would, as someone who loves Amphoreus. So Cyrene steps into the past, and as Herta says in the above screenshot, Cyrene fully will bring the remembrance into Amphoreus as it all converges on her record keeping. Her choice to not leave the time-traveling element active for someone else solidifies the causality of Amphoreus, closes off all elements of the present so that it becomes 100% a past event, and roots it into the universe, leaving no gaps for evil pure children to sift through and find gaps in, to try and take advantage of, and no other eon who can walk through time to meddle in. It will become indestructible. So Cyrene says this to you, that Amphoreus, the home we sacrificed everything for, now exists only in the memories of the cosmos. Cyrene says this to you without telling you this. The reason why the memory of Amphoreus even exists in the cosmos is because of her sacrifice, and to make sure that the home everyone sacrificed so much for has a tomorrow. Talking about Cyrene, I want to also talk about something else. Is Cyrene looping forever in the past, understanding these issues of causality? And so I would like to propose one thing. Cyrene does loop, both eternally and only once. I'll explain this thought process. Small Cyrene, which I've been calling Philia, inspires the demiurge, who was a cube, to become big Cyrene, Elysia, who defeats Irontomb. Elysia then walks back into the past and becomes Philia again, as we see at the end of 3.7. But this is why I think Cyrene does this both eternally and only once. There are two Cyrenes in this screenshot after Philia falls asleep to fulfill her role as an actor on the stage. One of the Cyrenes, there are two Cyrenes in this screenshot. One of the Cyrene who became Philia to close the causal loop. That Cyrene doesn't hold the memories of the cycles and is the one who loops with Phainon and everyone else. Phainon is the unknowing actor in the play, a character just like everyone else in the past, like Phainon and Aglaia, who are looping, and so Philia is then destined to replay her role in the memorial of Amphoreus just like everyone else, filling in the gaps of memory by keeping the loop consistent. However, she does so in a past event. It's not a reoccurring present. The 33 million loops are in the past. It's history, so to speak. It happened. The other is Elysia, who stands apart from Philia with all the memories and powers of an Emanator fully. This Elysia will now go to sleep because her role is to lignify the memories of amphoreus into the universe by crystallizing it into a light cone through looking back and being a witness, likely in some sort of path space where time is not a construct. Here, as you can see, within the light cone, all is fated. That's why we get the animated short right after we see Alicia walking away from a sleeping Philia. She's made sure Philia exists as an actor in the memory, closing the loop, problem number 1, and she, Alicia, has recorded the incident, problem number 2. She's used her powers to her fullest extent. She's exhausted at the end of recording amphoreus, and we can really see that at the end. So now she rests knowing amphoreus has the foundation for tomorrow. I began starting to think about Cyrene and whether she was looping eternally or not because of what Herta said. As Herta says, her state is probably more akin to being dormant. She's just sleeping. She used her whole being to wrap up amphoreus as an incident. And into the universe. So who knows when she will wake? She is a mimetic entity. She transcends time. So we most likely will never see Philia again because Philia is now like Phainon and Aglaia and Tribi in the past, in history. However, perhaps one day we'll be able to see Cyrene Alicia if she ever manages to wake up from this very huge undertaking that she just did without hesitation. I hope that made sense. Because that explains the ending as well as why Alicia fades away instead of having constant looping imagery as well in the animated short. So, my general thoughts on Fully after talking about all of this is that it's very cool. In a world where time is non-linear for certain beings, it's very interesting that Fully is the power that solidifies an event with causality loops so it can't be meddled in again. It also makes sense, or otherwise why wouldn't anyone tap into the power of remembrance and change history to suit their needs? Fully is a world-building failsafe and also illuminates other mentions of Fully's presence with a lot more interest now. For example, one of the only truly recorded moments of Fully is in the universe is Fully attending Louis Fleming's retirement in the IPC. Louis Fleming was the whole founder of the IPC. So if Fully is only there to close the causality loop, what did Fully cause there? But that's not the topic of the video, so let's move on. So now that we've established how Cyrene and causality and Fully works, let's talk about amphoreus's rebirth, the second topic of this video. How does amphoreus's rebirth work? To explain how amphoreus is rebirthing itself, I'm going to use both Cyrene's seed planting and taking root metaphor and also Herta's more data-like descriptions to help explain the process. Please note, though, that I want to first establish that when I mention data in this section, I also mean memory. As seen in 3.6, when Cyrene logged memories of each recurrence as data saves in the Scepter's core, the two concepts right now are one and the same. So when I say memories, it can also be interchanged with data in this section. So let's start from the very beginning. First question. If Iron Tomb was destroyed with Nanook's world-cleansing blood, where did Cyrene get the memory data to revive amphoreus from? I've seen this asked a few times, so I'm just going to point out 3 places that Cyrene takes memory data to revive amphoreus from. First is Cyrene herself. As seen in 3.6, Philia went through and recorded the 33 million cycles, and Alicia was recording them with her as the Demiurge cube. Alicia regained the memories of Philia and the Demiurge at the beginning of 3.7, and also the whole incident of events at the very end as well, so she can depend on herself. Second, as I've written is a remembrance seed holding the eternal page, created by Cyrene fully. As Cyrene says to Anaxagoras when he asks if he can fit into the book in 3.7, she says it can fit a whole world. And Cyrene is not joking here. We know that. She used her powers to create the eternal page moments before the Iron Tomb fight to make sure Amphoreus' history and the heirs are in as I've written as a backup, as seen here. And 3, the third place that Cyrene gets memory data to revive Amphoreus from is the Trailblazer. So the Trailblazer was carefully in the last recurrence and is a separate entity than the scepter that Cyrene can use as reference. TB has a separate set of very similar memories, having bore the last era Chrysia and witnessed both Phainon and Cyrene's journey over 33 million cycles of Amphoreus' struggle. TB also has a special connection with Cyrene as they co-write as I've written, and their stellarons also resonated, and that's why they met in the first place. Second question, how did Cyrene materialize Amphoreus' memories into a new planet in the physical material world? And the answer is the remembrance pathway. We've actually seen the remembrance do this in smaller scales before. So 1, memo keepers are required to dematerialize their bodies and become a memetic entity to be allowed to join the garden, which is a bit sus. And 2, light cones exist as physical objects formed from memories, time, and history. So the remembrance pathway is already very similar, like very acquainted with creating something out of memories. So while light cones are a single moment materialized, to answer the question of how Amphoreus is coming into being from data into the physical world, is that Cyrene is simply doing the process of creating a light cone into a physical object for an entire world. However, to avoid just making a massive light cone out of Amphoreus' memories, she piggybacked on the miraculous power of the trailblaze so that she's materializing Amphoreus as if it's a real planet. Memories don't have a future, but they are the foundation for the present. Trailblazing is all about rooting yourself in the present and stepping forward into the future. That's why everyone is saying Amphoreus is a miracle, because this isn't the typical path of how remembrance pathstriders materialize memories, which is usually in a crystal of some kind. But also why people aren't so surprised about this miracle when they tack on the trailblaze as an explanation of why something like this can happen. Trailblazing creates new possibilities when things are impossible and creates paths where there are none. Trailblaze was the only path that could have done the impossible and harnessed all the imaginary energy in the Iron Tomb fight to break through space-time to carry all the world's memories back to reality, which is kind of nuts. Trailblaze is also the only path that could use the same imaginary energy to give Amphoreus' data a chance to become real and physical in a sense that's more than a light cone recollection. It's why the Trailblazer is so important, and also why the Trailblazer is the anchor point for the new world. Cyrene created the eternal page and put it in as I've written, then gifted the whole book to Trailblazer, manifesting this book into physical reality. As I've written is the rooted fruit of Amphoreus, the history that Cyrene had just record kept. This fruit is to accompany the seed that just got planted in the universe by the power of the trailblaze, fed by the memories of the remembrance. And as remembrance is actually causality, a chain of events, cyrene is starting from the very, very beginning. Because you can't build homes in empty void, and you can't have cities without the stone to build them out of. Amphoreus, because of remembrance, needs to have its whole chain of events being sprung into motion to lead up to the final day. As you can imagine, this is a massive process requiring a huge amount of path energy and imaginary energy, as rendering something in such a large scale uses the power of using the power of two paths is probably something the universe hasn't seen before. Even Herta says she doesn't know how long it will take. With all that said, please imagine the Chrysos heirs watching a giant progress bar inch forward towards 100%. It's a big, long update screen. The next thing I wanted to talk about is then, what are Herta and Screwy doing and why is it important? In the Iron Tomb chaos, Herta and Screwy managed to salvage a substantial amount of amphoreus' data from the Scepter's databanks before it got destroyed with the world-cleansing blood of Nanook. This is separate from Cyrene's memory and As I've Written, both of which are memories that needed Cyrene's power to materialize. Herta and Screwy copying the code and data before it got destroyed means a source of data that doesn't depend on cyrene to be recreated. Remember, amphoreus was a fruit without roots. Other than the trailblazer and to an extent Dangheng and March, there is no other place that cyrene can depend upon that would have amphoreus' data stored in any way. With Herta and Screwy, this means that the new planet isn't depending only on Cyrene and the Trailblazer's memories to recreate itself. It now also has the salvage data of Amphoreus from the geniuses. Amphoreus, the new planet, now has two updates loading simultaneously, making it load into reality quicker, which is great. By touching upon this, I wanted to point out that this new planet is not a rebirth in the ways that we usually think about it. The very fact that the geniuses can feed memory data into Amphoreus' physical development and it working is also why we shouldn't think of this new planet being born in Earth physics terms. I think this is also a place where some people trip up, thinking Amphoreus as a new planet is going to develop like a real new planet, and therefore the planet and the life, culture, and the people in it will all be different. But that is not the case. This is not a new planet being created by a nebulae spitting out hot rocks. This is a new planet being grown from a data seed that Cyrene fully planted that holds the complete incident of Amphoreus. Cyrene is still ultimately the one who is the cause of the new planet's miracle, using trailblaze energy or not. Cyrene isn't an emanator of the trailblaze, blazer of new path. She is an emanator of remembrance, the path that looks backward on things that have already happened. Amphoreus already has a full set of causalities leading to its final day. The new planet is developing but only in accordance to how Amphoreus already did so, because Amphoreus is being created and fueled by the power of remembrance and not science. The planet will finish loading into reality just like how it is remembered. And because there's only one person left that truly remembers the whole Amphoreus incident, it means that Amphoreus will finish loading into reality as the Trailblazer remembers it, and the Trailblazer remembers the whole incident of Amphoreus through As I've Written. Therefore, the whole of Amphoreus will finish loading in as it is recorded in As I've Written. Remembrance is also why amphoreus can jump metaphorically from 1% to 50% progress by Herta and Screwy feeding it data. A planet developing by the rules of physics wouldn't be able to skip evolutionary phases because of a data dump, of course. But a planet developed by the remembrance sure can. And on that note, memory. Why are we spreading Amphoreus' story throughout the universe? Remember how Amphoreus was a fruit that was not rooted in the universe's memory? Amphoreus was a total unknown before the Iron Tomb incident, wrapped up in Lygus' equations and the Stellaron's contamination, so nothing of its existence could leak out, to the point that even the universe's Foley didn't record it. That made it a floating incident in another sense than universe Foley failing to record it in the universe's past. It's a floating incident in the sense that Amphoreus is something that is unknown, with no ties and no relationships with any other thing or being in the universe. It is an unvalidated existence across the universe. Amphoreus and everything in As I've written are still Memoria-based life forms, being closer to the imaginary sea. Spreading the word of Amphoreus will allow the existence of Amphoreus to begin being included in the history of the universe in every place where it has touched someone's memory. Such a widespread memory can't be so easily erased or changed, further protecting the current state of Iron Tomb's defeat and validating Amphoreus' existence. And with how lignification of memories work, the memories of today support those of tomorrow. As more memories of Amphoreus collect across the universe, believing that Amphoreus is real, Amphoreus becomes more real. People like Bronya and Yukong don't think of Amphoreus as a simulation program. They think of Amphoreus as a planet of heroes which sacrificed its existence to defeat Iron Tomb, waiting to be rematerialized into the universe. Collective consciousness therefore contributes to rooting the miracle of the new planet into the universe across the cosmos. The miracle has become a fact of history. The more minds engaged in validating Amphoreus as a real place, the more it becomes a known entity, and the more Amphoreus' memoria is being accepted by the universe, and the more the universe itself can respond to the collective thought that there should be a planet there through the miracle of the trailblaze. Being rooted also protects Amphoreus' miracle from meddling factors. I believe this also widens the bandwidth to upload Amphoreus into the universe, and I think this is a good presumption to make from how the game highlights the importance of increasing the number of people who know about Amphoreus to Amphoreus' recovery. Okay, so the second half of this query is a lot of people are concerned that the heirs will be metaphorically reborn in the new planet with no memories of us, the Trailblazer, and their history. And I will say, no, they will. Continuing the analogy of data that we've been kind of using, data and seeds and stuff, we will avoid using the word rebirth. I think this is the word that's tripping people up here. If someone is a baby again, and grown in different circumstances, they'd be a whole new person, right? But rebirth in that sense isn't what's happening. We've established that the world is being recreated through remembrance and not science. The same laws that apply to the planet apply to the heirs. The world is being rebirthed, guided by preloaded data. And so will the heirs be too. Remember the three +1 with the geniuses sources of data that Amphoreus is pulling from to render into reality? Yes, One of them is As I've Written, where all the heirs and their loved ones are chilling. As I've Written is a seed of remembrance, but let's put that aside again and think of it as a massive hard drive. Inside the massive hard drive, Cyrene fully saved the history of amphoreus and also the very last saved state of the heirs right before they used themselves to fuel Nanook's world-cleansing blood. As amphoreus's life forms are sentient beings, this saved state is actually the heirs as memetic life forms, like a memekeeper. It's just that they can only live in As I've Written for now due to the issues of their existence. Their existence is currently hinged on Cyrene's power as a pseudo-fully. As you can see, Phainon says this: the force that maintains our consciousness and form comes from elsewhere. Cyrene is sustaining them in As I've Written, which protects their existence until the trailblaze catches up and creates bodies for them and allowing them to become true life and not entities depending on Cyrene to live. If I think about the powers of remembrance, causality, and how memories work in the universe, unlike a memo keeper, who is a memetic life form but has their own causality, so they live their lives without fear of erasure or meddling, the heirs need the tomorrow on the new amphoreus' planet to exist again outside the book. They technically died, burning themselves to kill Iron Tomb. A new ending was written for them. Amphoreus was deleted and the heirs died, but through the trailblaze, its story continues on through the miracle of a new planet. That is now a fact, being spread across the universe and being solidified into history. The heirs are currently rooted in As I've Written. If the heirs manifest outside the book now, they may become unrooted fruits. Because, I forgot to write this, but because As I've Written is the place where the story continues on for them waiting to reload. So that's why being rooted in As I've Written is their current state of being, and where the universe expects them to be. If the heirs manifest outside the book, they may become unrooted fruits. Causality has already set up a miracle for them, rooted in the universe. They have finished their journey, and their new planet is loading in, a place where they will also load in when it's done, so they have a tomorrow. That's their causality, the chain of events the universe has understood to lead to their viable tomorrow. If they appear outside of that, they may risk being erased by meddling factors. They need the miracle of the trailblaze to finish to allow their new planet to finish loading in and for them to then be transferred into reality where causality has dictated that they will have a future as their own entity. And therefore, if we think about the nature of the eternal page and its role, in the cute scenes that you can visit in the eternal page, High Zealands can dive to the bottom of the ocean for Fagusa's alcohol to share with her friends. And Phainon and Mighty plan a library date. People shift in and out of availability to talk to, obviously going to other places in the eternal page. It implies the eternal page contains far more than the free areas we see. So remember that the Trailblazer co-wrote As I've Written. They were Kephili in the last Era Nova, a world that was cleansed of destruction, as you can see here. As the last Kephili, the Trailblazer remembers the final world state of the day, and with As I've Written working as it does, the Trailblazer most likely placed the entire world from that final day into it, judging by the wording during the cutscene below. In the name of Kaslana, let us depart and march towards the light. TB invites the whole planet of amphoreus to march towards the light. Herta says the very last recurrence cleansed by the Trailblaze was critical to amphoreus breaking free from its roots of destruction, So despite how the whole history of Amphoreus is the history of Iron Tomb, the world that is coming to be is the one that TB was carefully for. Wait, someone might say, then what's happening to the 33 million cycles of Amphoreus if only the last Amphoreus is being created physically? And I would say that the weight of the 33 million cycles of Memoria aren't gone when people become real. They're just in everyone's memories, in the past, where they should be. So anyway, when Cyrene's planet finishes rendering, TB and as I've written will most likely be the key and the very last step for Amphoreus to finish its last leap into reality. The final day is crucial to complete the causality that the new planet is using to build itself. The trailblazer will load that final world state, and everyone stored inside as I've written as they are, with their memories intact, can therefore be transferred into a fully stabilized Amphoreus that has finally caught up to them. Just like how Herta loads Amphoreus' data into the world, the trailblazer will load the heirs and the very last day of the world they love, the day they left to fight Iron Tomb. That way, the first day of the new planet of Amphoreus will truly be the long-awaited tomorrow for the heirs. That's also why, in the moment the trailblazer sits down and thinks about it, that it doesn't matter that Penacony will turn Amphoreus into a capitalistic cartoon, or the Xianzhou may eventually twist up an Amphoreus wuxia AU. Like, the trailblazer uses as I've written to remember Amphoreus, so it is what is in as I've written that will come into being, as we established before. And that includes the heirs and all the weight of their memories, tragedies, and triumphs. So meanwhile, we wait. The trailblazer will be doing what they can. They will be sharing the work throughout the cosmos to root Amphoreus' existence and miracle into reality further. The trailblazer will be keeping the heirs' memories alive as they visit the Eternal Page, and to also keep them company, and the trailblazer will be the one keeping as I've written safe until they can place the first fruit on a planet that has finished growing from a seed, creating the first true tomorrow of Amphoreus. Which I think is very nice. I will move on now. Phainon, the third topic I wanted to talk about at the very beginning of the video is Phainon's Emanator status. It's a little bit removed from the direct happenings that I've been talking about related to 3.7, but this is something I wanted to explore because there was a lot of discourse about it. And from what I've observed from the game, Phainon is an Emanator. He is not an Emanator. Yeah, Phainon giving away the blood has made people angry and confused as to his Emanator status and whether Hoyo has thrown such a compelling plot point away, but it really shouldn't, because if we look at the seeds and how Nanook's blood is handled, it's actually established that no matter where the blood is held, it's Phainon's. Phainon owns it, even if he doesn't want to. So I'll establish this in the next few sections. So let's start with Zephyro's proverb. So Zephyro's proverb in 3.7 confirms that he was sent to test Phainon. I got this pretty screenshot from this video. It's a very cool video about Phainon as an Emanator as well, so I had fun with it. Please watch it. And if we translate Zephyro's words into Spark Notes, he's basically saying this. Phainon was never meant to ascend as a destruction emanator, but walks the path of ascension anyway, because he was granted explicit permission from Nanook. However, Phainon continues to defy this destiny to ascend and become an emanator, and would rather crash 1,000 times to land a scratch against Nanook instead, which is such a small wound that it's basically pointless. What a fool. However, Nanook still graces and gives Phainon a drop of blood because the power of Phainon's fury and anger, so strong it tore open a way into past space, is impressive. I went into past space and battled him to test him on Nanook's behalf, and he's passed the test. Phainon and Iron Tomb, because brethren is plural, who are both about to experience coronation, Iron Tomb with coronating himself with Noose, and Phainon becoming real through Iron Tomb, Nanook waits for the both of you so that you both can jointly declare that the Son of Old has been devoured. I really want to highlight that Zephyro talks about Phainon and Iron Tomb as both being unleashed, jointly declare. And also just wanting to highlight that the line Son of Old and beyond, like the Son of Old has been devoured and buried by a darkness ever deeper. I'm personally not too sure about it, so if someone can explain them to me, that'd be great. But I think the Son of Old has been devoured means that the Age of Eons is going to be destroyed, which matches Nanook's MO. And the word Son is also used a lot for Nanook, so anyway, so that's the end of my SparkNotes translation of Zephyro's proverb. And what this says is that Zephyro talks about both Iron Tomb and Phainon as separate entities chosen by Nanook. Nanook is waiting for them both to jointly declare to come out into real space and be his emanators. Yeah, Nanook was watching. Anyway, Fantilia's proverb. Fantilia doesn't mention Iron Tomb at all until the end, where she's thinking of requiems. It's mostly about Phainon. And the rest of the Lord Ravagers are also pretty similar in that they're very interested in Phainon. There are two pieces of code that were glanced by Nanook in the whole of the Scepter's history. Chaos 666, the original piece of code that Lygus then took to create Iron Tomb after it did the first act of murder in simulations predating amphoreus. This act of murder attracted Nanook's attention, allowing it to ascend and become a Lord Ravager. As you can see in the Scepter logs here, Chaos 666 became a Lord Ravager. The second piece of code Nanook looked at was Phainon, Nakos 496, who after all the reoccurrences created so much hatred that he tore into past space, challenged Nanook, who gave him a whole stare down, and having watched Phainon battle with Zephyro and approving of what he saw, Nanook allowed Phainon to nick his face so that Nanook can give Phainon a drop of his blood. In that moment, Phainon ticked all the boxes to become a Lord Ravager. And that drop of blood was a grace gifted to Phainon, as Zephyro said. It's owned by Phainon. Let's take a step back and define an emanator first. The difference between a path strider who was glanced by the Eon and an emanator is that a glance just means that they've done something significant for their path, while an emanator is specially acknowledged and chosen by an Eon, given direct access to their Eon's power and or provided a gift of some sort. Lygus in 3.6 said that Phainon has bathed in Nanook's golden blood in past space, golden blood that holds unimaginable imaginary energy to destroy power on a level of an emanator, which is his blessing by the Eon. So Nanook has opened and given direct access of their Eon's power, provided him a gift, acknowledged him, and chose him. So this moment where a lot of people said Phainon was like a drop of a tear in Nanook's eye was actually really close. It's actually the moment Nanook blessed Phainon with a drop of his golden blood, saving Phainon from self-destruction. I need water. It's explicitly stated that Phainon tried to destroy and delete himself to create a fallacy in the Iron Tomb's development, as he's essential to the world-bearing Era Nova process. Phainon fails to burn himself out and die because Nanook blessed him. Nanook ironically saved his life with his own blood. Of course, that's when Lygus scoops this newly blessed entity at its weakest, when Phainon is a child, and feeds it into Iron Tomb so that he can theoretically make Iron Tomb even more powerful, so that it can speed up the process of Iron Tomb's self-coronation to kill Nous. However, that doesn't work. Lygus didn't think about Phainon as a sentient being, just as code, and he made a mistake trying to integrate the two codes together. The game very explicitly separates the two, further highlighting that Phainon is not Iron Tomb, by having Phainon working against Iron Tomb from within. As you can see, Caslana was detected clashing where it was defeated. He wanted to destroy its own data, but it was saved, and when it was saved, Lygus made Iron Tomb absorb subject Caslana. However, resistance from the absorbed subject Caslana happened, and Caslana's hatred is suppressing Iron Tomb. The game very clearly differentiates Phainon from Iron Tomb until 3.7. That's when Phainon's vessel becomes indistinguishable from Iron Tomb, because Iron Tomb successfully corrupts Phainon's vessel in the final fight. This isn't Phainon's fault. In essence, what Lygus did to Phainon was basically put Nakos 496, a Lord Ravager made of data, against a Lord Ravager made specifically to corrupt data in a deathmatch. Phainon was given yet again a fight that he could not win when he was placed into Iron Tomb. So in 3.7, when we kill Iron Tomb, which had fused with Phainon, we killed both Ravagers, right? No. So Iron Tomb, which is Chaos 666, is defeated in his failed coronation and died, but Phainon, Nakos 496, persists. Phainon and his base code, which is data, which is memories, which was looked and blessed by Nanook, has survived in As I've Written with all 33 million cycles of his memories intact. Phainon is a legit Lord Ravager even before Iron Tomb's coronation, because he was looked at by Nanook, gained Nanook's acknowledgement, and then given a gift directly from Nanook. Nanook's own blood, no less, made of pure, near limitless imaginary energy that gives him path power on par with an Emanator. The issue was that Phainon was still data, so he couldn't become the Emanator that Nanook wanted. That's why Nanook was waiting for him, as stated clearly by Zephyro, to become a real entity in the universe. And if we count the series of events that has happened so far, Nanook is still waiting for Phainon to become a physical entity, which is, as we've discussed in section 2, is an inevitable thing. Phainon will come back with all his memories intact. So he's just a non-active Lord Ravager, and Nanook is right there, which if you put it all together, it's like a very OD situation. Anyway, there are a few points to make about how the golden blood is Phainon's possession. As I said in the beginning, he owns it. 1. Despite using the golden blood to destroy all of Iron Tomb's viruses across the universe, in the end it's still there in Phainon's possession to give away to Screwy and the Xianzhou. The golden blood returned to Phainon's data in As I've Written, as if it's like Phainon is the one who controls it. Notice the golden blood only flew out of the trailblazer when Phainon stepped forward in the climax of the 3.7 Iron Chin battle, because the blood is Phainon's power. 3. The golden blood was floating in front of Lygus in 3.6 when he led Dang Heng to Catholi's statue, and as much as Lygus would have loved to use it for Iron Tomb or bathe in it himself undoubtedly, he couldn't touch it or interact with it at all, because it belongs to Phainon and Phainon hates its guts. 4. People had to ask Phainon and he had to give his permission before the blood could be held with Screwy and the Alliance. Note that the language is always about entrust or held. They're not changing ownership of the blood. As you can see here, would be willing to entrust the golden blood to an ally. It doesn't matter that Nakos 496 is giving away the blood or is choosing to ignore the power of destruction because he wants to hang out with his family as Phainon. Nanook has blessed him and opened the door to his power for him, and it's been shown time and time again, the person who receives a blessing or power from an Eon generally has no say in accepting it or not. Acheron doesn't want her power, but she has been acknowledged by IX. Aha's worm couldn't reject Aha's powers before exploding when the powers are taken away. Stephen Lloyd doesn't want to be Noose's Genius Society member, but he couldn't reject it. And Phainon, similarly, has immense access to destruction by being gazed at, acknowledged, and gifted. He just doesn't want to act on it. He doesn't want it. Why? Well, it's simple. Phainon right now is in heaven in the eternal page and is happy. The man is happy for once. Phainon is not the sort of person to stand by when someone is in pain or in danger or hurt. He's a hero through and through. But when there's no strife, no pain, no hunger or danger or anything, he's just happy to be like a country boy in his hometown, living life with his friends and family, because that's what he is at heart. He wants to trailblaze with the Astral Express because it's new and exciting after 33 million of cycles of being a prisoner. And he wants to understand the freedom he and the others were denied for so long. See what he was fighting for now that he's finally free from his responsibilities. And in the 3.7 ending, his greatest wish is to travel, yes, but specifically to travel with his family, his loved ones. As he says here, maybe roaming the cosmos with you all is my strongest desire right now. All of us together, of course. He doesn't want to be alone. And his loved ones, of course, includes the Trailblazer and to a lesser extent, Dang Heng and March. He's also happy to make new friends, so he would enjoy traveling even more. But there's a caveat to all of his adventuring wishes, even from the very beginning. He wanted to train in Castrum Kremnos. He wanted to be a hero wandering amphoreus. But at the very end of it all, he wants to go home to his family, boast about his achievements, bring back his experiences, and settle down. It's knowing that he has the act of going home that makes his adventures worth having in the present. I understand the frustration in the discussion surrounding Phainon's choice in the sense that people want Phainon to fulfill his potential because he has so much story potential. The thing is, Phainon is happy now because he's basically in Elysium. He's in heaven. There's nothing sad about where he is because this was Cyrene's gift to the heirs. She's watched over and seen suffer so much. That's why he can put down his arms. Phainon is so happy to be home. And home is where his loved ones are. He's tired, and I think people would agree he deserves his break. But do you really think with that personality that the moment he comes out into the real world with its messy politics and encroaching IPC, the threat of multiple paths and eons, the interested gazes of Lord Ravages on him, he's in meat space and Nanook is waiting, that things won't get complicated real quick? And if not that, Do you really think if Phainon heard the trailblazer, Dang Heng, and March were in trouble and that they needed someone powerful in their corner, that he wouldn't willingly take up the golden blood again and fly to the Astral Express's aid? Of course he wouldn't. That's not who he is. Phainon would never let that happen. Trouble doesn't have to find him to make him act. Trouble just has to touch his friends and Phainon will come running over. I have no doubt that his story will continue and his status as a non-active Lord Ravager will come into play. Barring, of course, that Honkai Star Rail devs don't chuck some weird curveball into the plot that I can't foresee at this current moment 2 weeks after 3.7. That's especially so with Edo Star coming. My friend has told me that the HSR devs are focusing more on creating second versions of characters like Dangheng PT and Dangheng Imbibita Lune. It seems HSR has finally built up like a cast of characters that the devs want to continue exploring and developing, and that's a great sign for amphoreus, honestly. So, oh yes, and also I want to talk very quickly regarding Phainon's role. There's something that's been repeated quite a few times in amphoreus, and Bartolo says it a lot. Like, even if failure comes 99.9999% of the time, if they can win in that 0.00001%, then it's worth trying. It's very relevant to amphoreus, which talks much about the importance of hope in futility, but also with how amphoreus reveals so much about the past through the airs and the world building. I think this statement of amphoreus is also a statement about Elio and Terminus. The Trailblazer's journey is one that collects and maintains close friendships and allies. In the alternate universe that Evernight tries to suck TB into, the Trailblazer stays on the space station and everything falls apart. Donghan leaves in the Xianzhou arc, March is frozen in ice, Welt disappears into the unknown, and Himiko is left alone with Pom Pom. Without stating how interesting it is that TV's Trailblaze is so powerful that their presence opens up a new pathway of fate for everyone, and that, let's say, Himiko the literal navigator is not. By the TB saving their friends and opening up new possibilities of the worlds they visit, they most likely create new scripts that Elio can then choose from. And TB has created allies that can face the ending of the universe with them. I made a quick table as a summary of a few of the allies that are pretty notable. Like Dangheng, of course, is like the reincarnation of a sire of Long, who had the strongest ties to the missing Eon. March is a pure seed of Anashrava. Evernight has Mythos ties and hates the garden. Sunday is a weird mix of the Harmony and Order who doesn't trust the Harmony. Robin is a galactic superstar Harmony pathstrider. Welt has the Star of Eden in his cane. Himiko is an amnesiac, and Pom Pom is very mysterious. The pair of them have a lot of secrets. Herta and Scurry are genius society members and erudition emanators, and also very powerful in their own right. Acheron strides against annihility as an emanator. We're getting to know the Stonehearts one by one, who are employed by Diamond, one of the only known emanators of the Preservation, who works with the IPC. For the Xianzhou, we have Jing Yuan and Fei Xiao. What's very interesting about Jing Yuan is that he's been trying to be, every single Trailblaze quest someone has been trying to depose of Jing Yuan, which is fascinating. Anyway, for another version of the hunt is the Galaxy Rangers, who are a more chaotic group, who has more potential to lead the story in places that, are less established. And Rapper has already marked Dr. Primitive, and Boot Hill has marked Oswaldo. Black Swan exists for the non-radical side of the Memo Keepers, Argenti for Idrilla connections, the Stellaron Hunters with Terminus, and we can go on, but like we're only like what 4 worlds in, and we already have so many ties with so many powerful people related to all these paths of the eons. We're basically collecting them. And with Edistar, we're finally facing Aha, who is so interesting, with Sampo or Sparkle. And then so with Amphoreus added to the mix, all the heirs are very remarkable in their own ways. With me highlighting that Anaxagoras has a potential for being a future Genius Society member, or at least an Intelligentsia Guild member. And Phainon is definitely another standout addition to this mix, this whole list of TB's allies. One who has gotten the direct blessing of Nanook and is a non-active Lord Ravager who will definitely stride alongside TB no matter what. I say this because it's contrasted to allies like Black Swan, who are definitely a bit more self-motivated. So Elio in the Exotale YouTube video, he showed the two main paths that he could see what if the Trailblazer went to Amphoreus, but he also might have believed in the Trailblazer's fifth tenet of salvation to create a new path for Amphoreus, a planet filled with valuable potential allies that, if saved, can create even more scripts that Elio can choose from for his fight against the universe's destruction. And perhaps the reason why TB is the one Elio is making the main character is that they're the only one who can create these new factors and allies for the TB's future story against the end of the universe. By choosing the Trailblazer, Elio gets the largest amount of possible scripts that, perhaps, continue to evolve to stand a chance for a happy ending for the universe. And you really can't deny having Phainon as your ally with all he is very compelling. Imagine just by having Phainon team up with Welt in the scenario where Welt fights Zephyro, it probably would have led to a much less of a catastrophic outcome. Yes, another extra note is Twitter, X, Honkai Star Rail put this post up that kind of describes, I'll just stick to the script. My friend shared this tweet with me detailing Phainon's permission to share the blood. With this, Phainon has entrusted and given permission for the Xianzhou and Scrollum to contain and use this power for their fight against their eons. The Xianzhou for their use against the abundance, and Scrollum so that he can study it to better understand paths and how to fight against the eons. It's very on brand for Phainon. His fight for now is over. He doesn't want the Golden Blood's power for himself, but as the power remains useful to the cosmos, he is willing to help the comrades that helped him and his friends reach the peace he now enjoys in the pages of As I've Written. It's his thank you, and he trusts the people whom the Trailblazer trusts. And if you think about it, every single person who came to fight Iron Tomb actually defied all odds to be there. Anyone who has tried to arrange meetings with anyone on executive level matters, or even just senior leadership, understands how terrible of a time it can be to find a time that suits everyone. Board meetings are regularly scheduled months in advance, and people still don't attend. The higher rank you are in an organization, the more things you usually have to deal with, and your schedule gets filled really quick. And if you remember in 3.5, Herta has already said to Trailblazer at the very beginning of the attempt to complete Era Nova that from the beginning of the cycle to the end, they only have a few system hours in real time. 14 to be exact. So all in all, Himiko contact the forces of the universe and they all converge to Amphoreus' position with soldiers and battleships and provisions and medical supplies and ammunition and all in around 14 odd hours. That's insane actually. I've heard people comment that you'd think more people in the universe would move to destroy Iron Tomb, but everyone has their own circumstances, especially in such a short period of time. I bet there were doubters who didn't believe Himiko, and some Xianzhou ships were explicitly said were tied down by other Lord Ravagers. The IPC has infighting and politics, and for people on the Express's side to argue down those who don't support or want to step back and reap the benefits, or don't believe the trailblaze, that needs time. And imagine like just the process of figuring out the logistics of it all. That also takes planning and time. So to call a substantial intergalactic multi-factional war effort in 14 hours or so actually shows how insane the Astral Express is actually. Yeah. I I actually had more talking points that I wanted to go through, but I'm just gonna skip through them because I'm really tired. So someone was talking about how the hero within is a Stellaron, but it's not. The hero within is actually Phainon's heroic wishes manifested by Cyrene fully to encourage him, which is really cute. Jing Yuan is not a big bad. He's just not. He's barely keeping things together after his very long stint as a general, and there are forces who want to depose him. Every single trailblaze mission that we've had, either the main one or the continuance, some faction or some force is trying to kick Jin Yuan out of his seat. The thing is, the lawful under him has vowed to support the trailblaze, so he moved when Himiko called, but the Xianzhou alliance has not vowed to support the trailblaze. Please note that in the bad ending for the Xianzhou lawful, it wasn't Jing Yuan who was holding the general's lance. He probably got deposed, and the moment he got deposed, things went wrong. So Jing Yuan has done his best, honestly, and I really hope he keeps his job because I think him being in his seat is actually keeping something really bad off our backs. This was something I talked with my friend. Sunday does do a lot actually alongside Black Swan in amphoreus after 3.5, 6, and 7. So if you think about it, even though he doesn't appear much to us, if you see the system hour note we mentioned right before this, they had very little time to do everything they needed. So Sunday basically accompanied Welt to fetch Herta, and then traveled with Herta back to the Express, and then they started tuning into amphoreus to try save the Trailblazer, and then probably a few minutes after, because of the time difference when he's still recovering, he coordinated and tuned again to get the Trailblazer and Danghan to meet Ebonite at the end of 3.6. Afterward, he joined the warp to Kefali and the Trailblazer in amphoreus, and then supported the fight against Iron Tomb with Herta. And Black Swan was doing very similar things. So even though we don't see the Astral Express crew outside amphoreus, they were probably rushing a lot. So subjective senses of time, right? The third is, I do acknowledge that Black Swan led us to amphoreus, but just because she led us to amphoreus doesn't mean she did it knowingly. Like, she still led us to it knowing that there were 3 different emanator level powers on it, and she wanted us to go there because she wanted to get there first. And like, I haven't forgotten how she was in Penacony. So at most, Black Swan is neutral to the Astral Express in the sense that she will be a normal person, like take care of March when she's sick, when she's traveling alongside the Astral Express. But if the Astral Express ever gets in between her and her goals, there is no foundation for trust. Even if her actions unknowingly led the Astral Express to the best route for this section of their journey. So I'm excited for Black Swan in the sense that she has a lot of room to grow as a character in that aspect. But like, what? Yeah, my opinion hasn't changed much just because she led us there. And uh, And also, this was pointed out to me by another friend, that people apparently are talking about Penacony and amphoreus having the same theme. And I was like, no. And so I just put a really quick summary here that Penacony is about escapism. Sunday's angst was how the Charmony dove who was too weak to fly was still expected to fly just because it was a bird, and therefore when Sunday and Robin let it free because they're like, oh my god, it's a bird and it must want to fly, it plunged to its death. And it was too weak to fly, and so he wondered why humans are similar, that just because we are humans, we are expected to live a life tackling all sorts of suffering that not all people are equipped to tackle. And therefore, he proposed a dream where no one suffers, an escape. His answer to why do people sleep was they sleep to escape, leading Sunday to want to erase suffering. And TB's answer is different. TB's answer is that we sleep to rest and wake up stronger to face tomorrow. Tomorrow. It's a self-deterministic answer funded on hope, which is very trailblazy of her. Them, him. Amphoreus is about drastic, unfathomable odds and the cost of sacrifice, of failure and trying again and again, and still choosing to move forward even if it's futile in every single way, because you never know, life can change and things can get better even if it is infinitesimal, and that hope is worth it. While Sunday focused on the suffering, Amphoreus focused on the moving forward. And TV's answer is that we can blaze a path towards tomorrow, because if we're already on this road, it's worth walking to this end. It's a very similar answer, but different because of its theming. It's not about suffering as much as determination. And I know this is not a very deep analysis. I can probably go on and make it another 6-page analysis, but I'd rather not. I'm done. I'm not doing this again. This was definitely sparked by a fit of 3.7 feels. Like, I played this day one, and afterwards, when I was trying to find, some community to kind of be excited with, everyone was confused instead. And so I was like, okay, I'll put something together. I'm like a Kingdom Hearts fan. I understand big metaphors presented not in the best way in the main story. So I was like, maybe I can put something together. So I did, but it took a bit of time. Like, videos are so tough. So I'm just gonna go back to AO3 and watching other people's content, which is my favored way of experiencing fandom. I tried my best. I hope it wasn't confusing, and I hope this helps someone out there, and I'm sorry for the bad quality of this video. I have 0 video editing skills, and I really didn't want to learn them for the one video I'll make my whole life. And so I read this all in one take, and so there are mistakes in this, and I apologize, but the script is literally on the screen in a Word doc, so you can verify my words if something is weird spoken out loud. If someone wants to take the contents of this video and edit it in a better way, feel free. Like, yeah, it would be great if more people can think about this. Anyway, have a lovely day. Thank you for being here, and looking forward to 3.8.